The boy opened the front door before Julian could knock. He looked up with wide, trembling eyes, smiled like he'd been waiting his whole life, and said, "Dad, you finally came back." Julian Mercer, billionaire, untouchable, colder than most men could survive becoming, forgot how to breathe. Rain slid off his coat and onto the cracked porch boards. His hand was still wrapped around the folder from the lawyer's office. Sale agreement, final signatures, childhood house gone by sunset tomorrow. But the boy standing barefoot in the doorway had Julian's eyes. Not similar, not close. His eyes. If stories like this hit somewhere deep inside you, stay with me till the end. And if your heart still believes broken things can come back alive, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from. Because this one doesn't let go. The boy stepped forward and hugged him. Not cautiously, not like a stranger, like a child throwing himself into a promise. Julian's arms stayed frozen at his sides. "Mom!" the boy yelled into the house, still clinging to him. "He came back! I told you he would!" A glass shattered somewhere inside. Then she appeared. Elena Voss stopped in the hallway like she'd walked into a gunshot. For a second, 20,000 nights collapsed in Julian's chest. She looked older, of course. Not old, just weathered in the cruel, quiet way life changes people who don't get to escape it. Her dark hair was tied back too fast. There was flour on one wrist. And the second she saw him standing there with Milo hanging onto his coat, all the blood left her face. "Milo," she said, too softly. The boy let go and turned. "You said he might not come." "I said," her voice broke, "go to your room for a minute. But now." The boy looked between them, confused, wounded already, and Julian felt that look like something sharp under the ribs. Milo stepped back slowly. When he disappeared down the hall, Elena grabbed the edge of the door. "You weren't supposed to come tonight." Julian stared at her. "That's my line." "No," she swallowed. "It isn't." He looked past her into the house. His house, or what used to be his before money taught him to call memory an asset. The hallway still had the crooked dent in the wall from when he'd ridden his bike inside at 12. The light fixture his father fixed with electrician's tape was still there. His mother's blue curtains were gone, replaced with plain white ones. A child's backpack sat on the stairs. Somebody had been living in his dead childhood. He stepped inside without asking. Elena shut the door behind him like she was trying to hold a storm out. "What is this?" he asked. She laughed once, without humor. "You tell me. You're the one who disappeared." He turned on her so fast she flinched, and that made him hate himself instantly. "I disappeared?" he said. "I buried my mother 3 days ago. Came back to the house she left me, and a boy who looks like me opens the door and calls me father. So no, Elena, you don't get to start with accusations." Her jaw tightened. "And you don't get to walk in here acting like the victim." Silence. Hard, breathing silence. The kind that knows names. Julian dropped the folder onto the old dining table. "How old is he?" Elena didn't answer. "How old?" Her eyes stayed on him. 8. The number didn't just hit him. It detonated. 8. 8 years ago he had come back once, quietly, secretly. No press, no staff, no black cars. Just him and a tired heart and one stupid hope. He'd met Elena behind the church after his first company went public, and before the world started calling him brilliant for things it once called desperation. They'd talked until midnight, fought for half of it, kissed through the rest. He'd asked her to come with him. The next morning, he received a message from an unknown number with a photo attached. Elena, crying in the passenger seat of Warren Holt's car. Under it, one line. She took the money. Stop humiliating yourself. That same afternoon, his mother called and told him Elena had made her choice. Julian had never returned. Now he looked at the hallway where Milo had vanished and felt his pulse turn violent. He's mine? Elena shut her eyes. Not long. Just long enough to tell the truth before she spoke it. Yes. The room tilted. Julian stepped back, then forward again, then gripped the chair beside him because the floor had started feeling unreliable. You're lying. I knew you'd say that. Because it sounds insane. No. Her voice sharpened. Because it's easier for you. He stared at her like she'd turned into a stranger wearing the face he used to love. Why didn't you tell me? Her expression changed then. Not anger. Not exactly. Something sadder. I did. Julian laughed. It came out ugly. No, Elena, you didn't. I wrote to you for months. I never got anything. I called the office in New York. They wouldn't put me through. I changed that number after. I know when you changed it, Julian. I called before that, then after. Then I stopped because I was tired of hearing your assistant tell me you were unavailable like I was some fan from a sidewalk. He shook his head. Why not come to me? With what money? I would have. She took one furious step toward him. Would have what? Believed me? You already didn't. That landed. Because it was true. Because once, when it mattered most, he had believed a photograph more than her voice. His mouth opened, then closed. Elena wiped at her cheek angrily. I was pregnant, sick, terrified. Your mother came to see me. Julian's chest tightened. My mother? She said if I loved you, I would let you go. That you were finally becoming something bigger than this town, bigger than your father's debts, bigger than the shame hanging off this house. She told me you'd resent the baby, that you'd call it a trap. She said she knew her son. Julian said nothing, because part of him knew his mother could have said exactly that, because part of him hated that she might have been right about the man he was becoming. Elena looked toward the stairs, making sure Milo wasn't there. She offered money, she said. I threw it back at her. His throat went dry. Then why did I get that photo? Her face hardened. Because Warren Holt drove me to the clinic after I fainted in the street, and your mother made sure someone took the picture. I found that out later. Julian went still. Warren Holt. The same man now standing beside Julian's newest development project like a smiling snake in a suit. Town council hero, land broker, handshake politician. The man who had once called Julian the poor kid with rich dreams. No, Julian murmured, but he wasn't denying her now. He was rearranging years. Elena stepped back from him, like she was exhausted by the weight of old truths. Your mother came back 2 months ago. She was sick, much sicker than she admitted. She told me she'd done terrible things. She cried in my kitchen for an hour. Then she asked me to move here. Julian looked around the house again. That's impossible. She had keys and guilt. He laughed once, bitter and stunned. So my dying mother invited the woman I loved and the son I never knew into my house. And never told me? She said you had to see it with your own eyes. That's not repentance. That's cruelty. I know. Something moved at the top of the stairs. Milo. He was standing in the shadows, small fingers gripping the banister. His eyes went from his mother to Julian. Are you really my dad? No boardroom on earth had ever made Julian feel this defenseless. Elena turned. Milo, I told you to stay upstairs. But is he? Julian looked at the child. His child. 8 years of birthdays, fevers, nightmares, lost teeth, school plays, first bike rides. 8 years stolen by pride and lies and silence. And somehow, the person bleeding for it most was the little boy waiting for an answer he did not deserve to fear. Julian forced himself to speak. I might be. Milo's face changed. It didn't break all at once. It folded in on itself, like paper near fire. You said yes, he whispered to Elena. She did not look at Julian when she answered. He is. Milo looked back at Julian. Then why did you say might? Because I don't know how to hold something this precious without checking if life is about to rip it away again. Because I have spent years trusting contracts more than people. Because love terrifies me more than losing money ever did. But what came out was worse. I just want to be sure. Milo nodded too many times like he was trying to help an adult not feel cruel. Okay, he said quietly. That makes sense. Then he turned and went upstairs without crying. That was somehow worse than if he had screamed. Elena looked at Julian with naked contempt. Congratulations, she said. He waited 8 years to hear your voice. Julian left because staying felt impossible. The rain had stopped, but the town still looked wet and judgmental under the yellow streetlights. He drove to the only inn still open on Mercer Road, checked in without giving his last name, then sat in the dark for nearly an hour without taking off his coat. He had built a company from nothing. He had bought private islands because other billionaires did. He had made investors twice his age afraid to underestimate him. None of it helped him understand why his hands were shaking. At midnight, he opened the folder his mother's lawyer had given him. The sale agreement was on top. Underneath it was an envelope he hadn't noticed before. For Julian. Only after you see the house. He stared at his mother's handwriting until anger blurred it. Then he tore it open. Inside was a single key and a note. Attic chest. Read everything before you destroy what's left of us. He drove back before he could decide not to. The house was dark except for a lamp in the kitchen. Elena must have left it on. He used his old key on the side door, climbed the narrow attic stairs, and found the cedar chest under the window. It was locked. The key fit. Inside were baby clothes, a wooden toy train, a hospital bracelet with the name Milo Voss. And beneath them, bundled with a blue ribbon that looked too carefully tied for trembling hands, 17 letters. all addressed to him, all opened. Julian sat down hard on the floorboards and read until sunrise. Every letter was Elena. The first one was angry. The second was hopeful. The fifth begged him to call. The ninth said Milo had his eyes. The 12th said she was done trying, but she still hated herself for checking the mailbox. The last one was only 4 lines. I won't make him feel unwanted because I loved the wrong person. If you ever come back, I hope life has hurt you enough to make you softer. I hope our son never learns how long you stayed silent. I hope I'm strong enough not to hate you when I see you again. Julian lowered the paper and stared into the gray attic light. For the first time in years, he cried without hiding it from himself. Not loud, not beautifully. His breathing got ugly, his face twisted. He pressed the heel of his hand to his mouth and still couldn't stop. By the time he came downstairs, Elena was in the kitchen packing Milo's lunch. She looked up, saw the letters in his hand, and understood. That should have made it easier. It didn't. Julian set them on the table like evidence against the dead. She took them. Elena kept packing the sandwich. I know. He looked at her. Why didn't you tell me she confessed? She did not confess everything. She let me hate you. Elena's mouth trembled once, then steadied. You were always willing to do that on your own. That one he accepted. Milo came in with his backpack, saw Julian, and stopped. There was no joy this time, only caution. Julian crouched to his height. I read the letters. Milo looked at him carefully. The ones Mom wrote? Yes. Did they say I'm yours? Julian nodded. Milo's lower lip moved, almost betraying him, but he held it still with remarkable effort. So you're sure now? Julian felt how much damage a single sentence could do. I'm sure enough to know I was wrong. Milo shifted his backpack strap. Are you going to leave again? No one in Julian's entire empire had ever asked him a harder question. Elena quietly turned away. Julian answered the only honest way he could. I don't want to. Milo nodded, but children knew the difference between want and promise. At school drop-off, Milo didn't look back. Julian stood by the gate long after the bell rang. What a beautiful reunion, a voice said behind him. Warren Holt, perfect coat, practiced smile. Rot where a soul should be. Julian turned slowly. Warren spread his hands as if they were old friends. I was wondering when the surprise would reach you. During cons, the space between them so fast, Warren's smile fell a half-second too late. You knew. Warren adjusted his cuff. I know many things. You sent that photo. Warren's eyebrows lifted. Did Elena finally tell you? Took her long enough. Julian grabbed his jacket and slammed him against the school fence. Parents gasped. Children stared. Warren's polished mask cracked, revealing the old smugness underneath. You stole 8 years from me. Warren didn't flinch. No, Julian, your mother did that. I simply gave her what she wanted. You should thank me. Without all that pain, maybe you never become who you are. Julian's fist twitched. Then he saw Milo in a classroom window, watching. Julian let Warren go. Warren straightened his lapels with slow contempt. Control yourself. We have a council vote tonight. Your resort deal closes after that. Unless, of course, your little domestic discovery has made you sentimental. Julian said nothing. Warren smiled again. I always preferred you ruthless. By noon, the entire town knew. A billionaire came home to sell his childhood house, found a secret son inside. Ex-lover, dead mother, old money, new shame. By 2, reporters were near the council building. By 4, Julian's New York office called 3 times asking whether the rumor would affect the land acquisition. By 5, Elena refused his offer to have dinner. Don't do that billionaire thing where you throw solutions around because you feel guilty, she said. Milo isn't a quarterly problem. I know that. Do you? He almost snapped back. Instead, he looked at the sink full of dishes, the unpaid electric bill tucked under a magnet, the patch stitched onto Milo's school pants, and said, quieter, probably not enough. That was the first answer she didn't hate. At the council meeting, every seat was full. Warren stood at the podium talking about progress, jobs, tourism, a brighter future. Renderings of the luxury lakeside resort glowed on the screen behind him. Glass towers, boat docks, money shaped like paradise. What the screen didn't show were the 16 homes that would be condemned, including Elena's current rental, including the auto shop where Milo's best friend's father worked, including the church basement food pantry. Julian had signed off on numbers. He had never looked at the names attached to them. When public comment opened, Elena stood. The room shifted. People loved a scandal when it walked upright. She held her paper with both hands, but her voice was steady. My son has lived in fear of moving 3 times in 2 years, she said. He finally sleeps through the night in one place, and now you want to tear half this street apart for investors who won't remember the town's name in 6 months. Warren leaned back like he'd predicted the line. Then a man from the back laughed. Easy for you to talk. Maybe ask your billionaire to buy us all houses. A few cruel chuckles followed. Elena's face burned, but she kept standing there. Then Warren delivered the knife. For transparency, he said into the microphone, Ms.
Voss currently resides in Mr. Mercer's inherited property without legal tenancy. This emotional display may be less about community and more about personal leverage. The room erupted. Julian saw Milo in the second row beside his teacher. Small, mortified. A boy hearing adults turn his existence into gossip. Something ancient and violent rose in Julian's chest. He stood. The room quieted fast. He walked to the front, took the microphone out of Warren's hand, and faced the crowd. I came here to sell a house, he said. Instead, I found out my mother intercepted 17 letters from the woman I loved and hid the existence of my son for 8 years. Warren Holt helped her do it. Shock passed through the room like wind. Warren laughed sharply. Be careful, Julian. No, you be careful. Julian held up the bundle of letters. These were in my attic, opened, hidden, dated. And if anyone here thinks this project is about your future, ask Mr. Holt how much land he purchased around the proposed resort route 6 months before zoning discussions began. Now people were on their feet. Council members whispered frantically. Warren stepped toward him. This is a personal meltdown, not a legal argument. Julian looked straight at him. Then here's the legal one. Mercer Developments is withdrawing from the project effective immediately. The room exploded. Warren's face drained. You can't do that,
he hissed. I already did. You'll lose millions. Julian glanced toward Milo. The boy looked stunned, hopeful, scared to trust it. I've lost more valuable things. Julian handed the microphone to the council chair and walked out before anyone could stop him. He found Milo outside under the courthouse steps while the town shouted itself hoarse behind them. The boy looked up. Did you really stop it? Yes. Because of me? Julian sat beside him on the concrete. Because I'm tired of men like me arriving with money and calling destruction opportunity. Milo thought about that. Men like you? Julian gave a sad smile. I'm trying to be less like me. For the first time that day, Milo smiled back. It lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then Elena came out of the building, eyes wet, chest heaving, and before Julian could stand, she slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked in the evening air. Milo froze. Julian didn't move. Elena's hand shook at her side. That was for 8 years. Julian nodded once. Fair. She drew in a breath that seemed to hurt. And this? Then she stepped forward and hugged him. Not gracefully, not forgivingly, like someone drowning and furious that the shore still existed.
Julian held her with the kind of care usually reserved for explosives. That night might have become the beginning. Instead, it became the next disaster. At 2:13 a.m., Julian woke to pounding on the inn door. A teenage boy from the neighborhood stood there, barefoot and wild-eyed. Your house, he gasped. There's a fire! Julian did not remember driving. He only remembered arriving to orange light and screaming wood. The old Mercer house was burning from the side porch inward, flames eating the dry walls like they'd been hungry for years. Neighbors stood in the road. Elena was fighting 2 men holding her back. Fire trucks hadn't arrived yet. Milo! She was screaming. Milo! Julian's blood turned to ice. Where is he? He went back in, Elena cried. He said he forgot something. Julian was already running. Somebody grabbed his arm. You can't! He tore free. Heat slapped him blind the second he hit the front hallway. Smoke rolled low and black across the ceiling. The old staircase groaned like an animal. He pulled his shirt over his mouth and shouted, Milo! No answer. Then, faintly, from upstairs, Dad! That word hit harder than the heat. Julian ran up through sparks and cracking plaster. In Milo's room, the bed was half on fire, curtains gone, window jammed. But Milo wasn't there. Dad! Across the hall. Julian kicked the door to his old bedroom open and found Milo crouched by the closet, coughing violently, clutching a small metal box to his chest. A burning beam crashed behind them. Julian dropped to his knees. Come here! Milo stumbled into him, shaking. I'm sorry, he choked out. I wanted to save your things. Julian grabbed the box and threw it aside. You are my thing. The ceiling groaned. There was no path back to the stairs. Window. Julian yanked the curtain rod free, smashed the glass, and looked down. Too high for Milo alone. Not impossible. He wrapped Milo in the blanket from the bed, ignoring the sparks catching on his sleeves. Outside, voices were shouting. Men were gathering below. Milo, look at me. The boy's face was blackened with soot, terrified, trusting. I'm going to lower you out first. No. Yes. No.
Milo clutched his shirt. "You'll stay." Julian put both hands on his face. "Listen to me. I came back too late once. I am not failing you tonight. You hear me?" Milo's eyes filled. Julian kissed his forehead once, fierce and fast, then lowered him through the broken window into the arms of the men below. The second Milo left his grip, the floor gave way under Julian's left foot. He dropped hard, pain exploding up his leg. The room lurched sideways in flame. Outside, Milo screamed, "Dad!" Julian dragged himself toward the window, but the frame collapsed inward, and fire swallowed the space where escape had been. For 1 second, the whole world narrowed to smoke and regret. Then, through the roar, came Elena's voice from outside, raw enough to cut through death itself. "Julian!" Not Mr. Mercer, not even a curse. His name. He used the closet door as a shield, crawled through the heat, found the hallway, and half fell down the staircase as it started to split. By the time he burst through the front door, firefighters were charging in. Elena hit him so hard they both went to the ground. He didn't even feel the gravel. She was sobbing into his neck, shaking with the kind of fear that turns people honest. "I thought you died," she said. "I thought you died, and this was my punishment." Julian wrapped one burned arm around her and searched for Milo. The boy was standing 10 feet away, crying openly now, the metal box in his hands. Julian held out his arm. Milo ran into it. 3 of them stayed like that while the house burned down behind them. Later, when the paramedics wrapped Julian's leg and bandaged the burn on his forearm, a firefighter came over. "Gas line was cut," he said quietly. "Didn't look accidental." Julian turned his head. Across the street, under the flashing lights, Warren Holt was getting into a car. He did not look back. 2 days later, police searched Warren's office. A week later, financial records surfaced connecting him to the illegal land purchases, the sabotage contractors, and years of quiet extortion dressed as civic planning. The town devoured him. Julian didn't help. He didn't need to. Truth, once loose, had claws of its own. He stayed in town. That surprised everyone most of all. He moved Elena and Milo into the lakeside guest house the company had rented for executives. Elena argued for an hour before accepting. Milo accepted in 6 seconds and immediately asked if billionaires really had ice makers that made crushed ice on demand. Julian laughed so hard he had to sit down. It was the first real laugh Elena had heard from him in years. The metal box Milo had tried to save from the fire turned out to hold old photographs, Julian's father's watch, and a cassette tape labeled in his mother's handwriting. For when he's ready. They listened to it together one quiet night after Milo fell asleep on the couch. His mother's voice came through shaky and thin. "Julian, if you are hearing this, then I was too cowardly to tell you alive. I thought I was protecting you from becoming your father. Instead, I made you smaller than him. He loved fiercely. I loved fearfully. Elena deserved better. Your son deserved better. If there is still time, choose them before ambition teaches you to call loneliness success." When the tape ended, neither of them spoke. Elena reached over and took his hand. That mattered more than forgiveness. Months passed. The charred remains of the old house were cleared, but Julian never sold the land. Instead, he built something new there. Not a mansion, not a monument. A home with a wide porch, a kitchen big enough for loud breakfasts, and a small room under the stairs that Milo insisted would be for important secrets and emergency cookies. He also funded repairs for the families nearly displaced by the resort project, restored the church pantry, and put the auto shop in a trust under the owner's name so no developer could touch it again. People said it was redemption. Julian knew better. Redemption wasn't one grand gesture. It was waking up every day and choosing not to run when love demanded more than money ever had. The hardest part wasn't winning Elena back. It was earning tiny things. School pickup rights, a seat at Milo's science fair, being allowed to braid a terrible last-minute costume rope for the school play because Elena was stuck at work. Hearing Milo call from the other room, "Dad, where are my sneakers?" Like the word had finally stopped being fragile. One evening, almost a year after the fire, they sat on the new porch while summer rain tapped the roof. Milo was asleep inside with a comic book on his chest. Elena leaned against the railing, looking out at the dark yard where the old tree had survived everything. "You know," she said softly, "for a long time I rehearsed what I would say if you ever came back." Julian looked at her. Was any of it kind? She smiled without turning. "Almost none." "Fair." She was quiet a moment. Then, "I never rehearsed this part." "What part?" "This." She finally looked at him. "You staying." Julian took her hand and kissed the scar near her thumb, the one from when they were 17 and she broke a bottle trying to pry open a paint can in his father's garage. "I don't think I was ever actually homesick for the town," he said. "I was homesick for the people I abandoned inside it." Tears filled her eyes, but she laughed them back. That was dangerously close to poetic. "I'm healing." She stepped closer. "You still have a lot to make up for." "I know." "Good." Then she kissed him. Not like the girl from behind the church. Not like the woman from a life that went wrong. Like someone who had seen the worst parts of him and was willing, carefully, to love what he was trying to become. Inside the house, Milo's sleepy voice drifted from the couch. "Mom, we're out here," Elena called. A small face appeared at the screen door. "Can I ask something?" Julian smiled. "Always." Milo rubbed one eye. "When people ask where you live now, do I say the billionaire's house or my dad's house?" Julian looked at Elena. She looked back. Then Julian opened the door for his son and said the words that finally made everything they had survived feel worth surviving. "You tell them it's home." And if you were that little boy standing in the doorway, would you have opened your heart that easily? Or made him earn every step inside it?